Greetings, everyone. This is Hong Long from Hong Long Wuxia. And now it's time to turn to some gaming news. Quite big news as well. Not so much for the particular company involved, which is Frontier Gaming, or the game that this news affects, which is Elite Dangerous. No, this is big news for what it portends for the gaming industry as a whole in the period going forward. What's happening is that Elite Dangerous is adopting the model of pay to win. I've already seen a number of videos on the subject, and I can agree with much of what has been said. From the negative aspects, here's looking at the Amex, to the understanding of the reasons by the partners, Obsidian Ant and others. That being said, nobody wants to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is capitalism. First of all, for those of you who are not aware and do not watch my streams, Elite Dangerous is a space simulator. Originally a spaceship simulator, but ground vehicles were added with Horizon Update and then walking around with Odyssey. It's an MMO that you can play in a single player mode with everything taking place in a one-to-one procedurally generated copy of the entire Milky Way galaxy. And it's over 1,000, it's set 1,000 years in the future, over 1,000 years. And you make your way through the galaxy in whatever way that you decide. There's a number of types of gameplay that you can get involved in, from exploration, mining, trading, space combat, on-foot combat, and so on. Most people do a bit of everything. There are people who just do this, but most of the people that play the game are doing a little bit of everything. For those of you who do not know, pay to win is the handle or the moniker given to features in a game which allow players to buy things that make their character, their character's belongings, etc., better than everyone else's. It allows players to get things sooner, as in this case, where if you pay, you can get the new ship 3 months sooner than those who either cannot afford to pay or those who choose not to pay. It also allows people to bypass what is known as the grind, while those on a budget are forced to wade through every tedious second of it. Grind. What's grind? I might point you in the direction of the Amex, as he's done a extensive amount of research and thinking on this topic. So I might actually put that post that video in the description. But not all of it I agree with. The fundamentals are there. Grind's what turned me off to RPG games well before the start of the new millennium. With certain exceptions, I did play the first 3 Diablos. To be succinct, the grind is in games is when the developers make you constantly repeat the same or almost the same task over and over and over and over and over again, without there being, say, a valid reason for it. And really the only valid reason for making someone repeat the same task over and over again is to teach them the skill that's required to do that task over and over and over again. But no, we're not here talking about repetitive tasks instituted, or we're talking here about repetitive tasks instituted for no other reason than for making people play the game longer. And that's just it. There's just no sense behind it. One should be able to see where I'm going to go with this. Now, while Play to Win ruins multiplayer games, obviously, by making the wealthy the king of the hill, by virtue of the size of his wallet, it also affects single-player games, and it affects that experience in a much more subtle but equally deal-breaking manner by forcing the company to ensure that there is grind in the game to begin with. I mean, you got to have a reason for players to want to pay to win. So you got to have grind. If you don't have grind, people aren't going to want to pay to win. But you also have to make the present grind. You know, the stuff that's in there now, you got to make it grindier, longer, more boring, more repetitive, so that people will opt for the pay-to-win features. And as the Yamik says, it's a slippery slope. I would recommend everyone to check out the video, which, like I said, I'll put down there. While I disagree with his mistaken political views, he makes some excellent videos technically and substantially. And the Yamik's criticisms are excellent in this particular case as far as they go. But because of his personal origins in Latvia and his or his parents' experiences with the Stalinist bureaucracy that ruled Latvia, he, like so many raised in what was once the Eastern Bloc, including Russia, reject not only the historical struggle for socialism, but there's also an outright rejection of the viability of socialism. And this leaves him and his political perspective blowing in the wind, and always settling on what seems to be working right now. And this leaves him with an impressionistic view of the current situation, ergo his glorification of Larian Studios and the success of Baldur's Gate 3. It also makes him politically susceptible to the ramblings of far-right forces, as in the war in Ukraine. He's actually one of the few streamers who jumped on that bandwagon that I did not stop following. That's how good the videos are that he makes. For anybody who knows me, this is like a major concession. But I also understand the reasoning behind it. However, rejecting the socialism without even having a cursory knowledge of the fight of the left opposition in the 1920s to Stalinism, or the eventual break in 1933 due to the rise of Hitler, and the fight to establish the Fourth International, and indeed any knowledge of the struggles of the Fourth International in the post-war years to the present, it's like attempting to describe Chelsea's loss this weekend to Arsenal. I mean, never having seen or played in a football game, or knowing the rules of the game, or anything about the history of the two teams, their managers, or owners. Yeah, you can't do it. While he and others have pointed out that Frontier Management made tremendous errors in its recent history, which have led to a collapse in its stock price, blaming the suits and then wiping one's hands of things does nothing to explain why this is going on, why it will continue to go on, and how it can be stopped. It isn't just, after all, Frontier Management that's inept. In fact, one would have a hard time finding upper management at any major corporation, in any industry, any place in the world, that wasn't egregiously inept at what they do. It's just the nature of the beast. I mean, with capitalism being rife with nepotism, sycophancy, and what I would like to term a eunuch-like culture among its top executives. A good example of this dynamic is represented in the film A Thin Red Line. As one goes up the chain of command, the bosses become ever nuttier and more ignorant and ever more domineering as a necessity. The institution of play to win has nothing to do with the nefarious plots of Frontier Management, and more to do with the current spiraling collapse of the capitalist system. Let's not forget that the past few years has seen almost every game released before it was ready, buggy and with a host of major issues. That's because it's a systemic issue, not the repository of individual bad management teams. If you want to find out who is directly to blame, look no further than your present government and those they are in alliance with temporarily across the globe. The move a few years ago to raise interest rates across the globe. This was done for the sole purpose of driving down demands for higher wages of workers. How is this so, you might ask? Well, firstly, The inflation was embedded by the pandemic, but it wasn't caused by it. The cause has been the QE, or quantitative easing policies carried out by one central bank after another, including in China. For those of you who might be confused by the name of the party that rules China at present, into thinking that China isn't a capitalist government. Since 2008, this has been going on, and indeed, even before, since the collapse of the Asian tigers in 1998. The ruling class, especially in its center, in the center of world imperialism, the United States, has been handing out cheap and sometimes free money to the ultra-wealthy, including banks, hedge funds, and in some cases, even paying them to take the money. This is especially true in Japan. This has resulted in a huge oversupply of cash, which has dramatically devalued the world's reserve currency, the dollar, forcing prices higher. In fact, the pandemic, which saw the ruling class in the United States alone hand over $21 trillion to the wealthiest people in the world. In fact, the wealthiest people the world has ever known. And this saw a massive lowering of living standards across the board, while at the same time enriching the upper 1% of the population. Musk's wealth now dwarfs what he had before the pandemic began. And it was all fictitious. His wealth has nothing to do with productivity or sales, but rather on the explosion of free money handed out to the rich and the corresponding exponential explosion in stock prices. But workers were having none of it. And having taken strike action in their millions over the last few years, only the treachery of the trade union bureaucrats has been able to dissipate these struggles through betrayal after betrayal. Just as an example, Shawn Fain of the UAW, who is the favored candidate for the job of Labor Notes and the Democratic Socialists of America, led a scabbing operation last year called the Stand Up Strike. This was a play of words on the sit-down strike held in the factories during the 30s, which built the UAW in its infancy. Those strikes saw workers sitting down in the factories and taking them over and refusing to work. Fain's stand-up strike, as it was called, saw 80%, although for most of the strike it was 90% of the workers, stay on the job, standing up on the assembly line, continuing to make products, while the great minority of workers walked a picket line, which, according to the automakers, helped free up logistical logjams for them. All this saw Fain named as CNN, that great bastion of working class movement, named Fain as its labor leader of the year, and it saw him become Genocide Joe's BFF as well. Seeing him show up at State of Union, there was an instance where Fain sat there and he was caught on camera telling the president, we're pledging our workers to you in your war. This war that they just provided $95 billion in funding for the other day. How does raising interest rates keep wages low, you may ask? By slashing jobs. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs, millions of jobs, all of those underperforming companies that have been kept alive by the free money that was handed out all those years. Now, all of a sudden, they have to pay those margin calls. Their loans have actual interest rates attached to them that have to be paid, let alone high ones now that they're unable to pay. The high interest rate regime is designed to drive not only underperforming companies to the wall, but entire industries. And for those of you too young, I urge you to read up on what happened to the gaming industry in the early 80s as Volcker's shock therapy took hold in the United States. And while the interest rates went higher then, the amount of debt that was that we currently have stands exponentially higher than in those days. So unlike Yamix, I will continue to play this game until it becomes unplayable, or I find something similar I like better. But this play to win crap, this is not a good thing for this game or games in general. But until we make capitalism a thing of the past, the weasels are going to continue to call the shots, and that means we're going to have to keep putting up with this crap. And there's only one way to stop it, and that's world socialist revolution. So give us a thumbs up, everybody, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let me know in the comments down below what you think.